coworker forces me to do his job, so I accidentally get him fired by exposing his affair. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Sit back and enjoy a story about some revenge I achieved at the U.S. Postal Service back in the 1990s that cost a bullying full-time carrier his union job. In summer of 1991, I found a summer job as a casual carrier for the USPS. They used to hire summer temps to cover for all the full-time carriers who mostly took their vacations in the summer. The USPS had rules that things had to be delivered within certain time windows. People could get fired if they took too long to do tasks. Carriers were both openly and secretly monitored and timed on tasks. And we had the first computerized time system I ever saw. They would be secretly followed a few times per year to be sure they were working hard the entire time they were outside the post office. The post office building even had secret back hallways, passive sound monitoring, and hidden raised viewing areas where they could see the sorting floor unobserved. Cameras and microphones were hella expensive back then, so this was all done using tricky architecture and the eyes and ears of the postal inspectors. We were supposed to walk over and punch in and out of tasks so that they could track productivity to the second. People walking a delivery route were expected to do it fast, and better routes went to faster carriers. Slow carriers got mercilessly hassled to be faster, and were disciplined for slowness. Look at Newman on Seinfeld. Going postal due to overwork was not really a joke there, cause people would flip out and hurt someone. I hear it's worse now with GPS. Pre-internet, there used to be a huge volume of mail that got shuffled around the country every day. Quantities of email that you would find hard to believe compared to what we see now. I was a broke college student home for the summer, and was willing to work any hours they gave me, so the supervisors liked me. I was also very friendly with most of the full-time carriers, because I was a good worker and didn't rock the boat. Also for other reasons that I'll talk about in a minute. I'm a fairly big guy, 6'5" or about 195 centimeters and about 210 pounds back then, and I could carry a lot of weight, so that also made management happy. I was also in my early 20s with long legs, so I could move fast carrying a lot of weight. Sorting mail back then was labor intensive and took a lot of time to learn. I had a regular route that I would deliver in the afternoons that was sorted by irregular. I would usually do oddball delivery stuff in the mornings, help move heavy things around, do special deliveries, things like that. I would also deliver for full-time carriers that went on vacation, or whose T6 was on vacation. Side note, mail delivery is 6 times per week, but full-time carriers only work 5 days per week. The T6 is a full-time carrier who did the 6th day for 5 routes. That way, it worked out that everyone only worked 5 days per week. At the time, a lot of retail catalogs were mailed to houses. A lot of them. Some were substantially bigger than current magazines. We also delivered magazines, ads, packages, and samples. A lot of companies would mail free samples of products, like laundry detergent, shampoo, and other liquids to be delivered to every house in the route. These were the bane of the carrier's existence, because they were bulky and heavy. This slows you down, and is physically taxing. Usually, carriers would divide the very heavy stuff up and deliver it throughout the week. I was assigned to do the T6 work for a guy we'll call Dave for a few months. Dave. Picture a phys ed teacher in his 40s, bad mustache, about 5'7", wore knockoff sunglasses like Magnum PIs, and had an opinion about everything. Dave learns he has me as his T6, and decides he'll leave all the heavy stuff for me. So once a week, I got confronted with the entire week's worth of heavy mail for this jerk's route. I confronted him about it, and he basically laughed, and said that there was nothing I could do about it. The other full-time carriers didn't like Dave much, but I was a temp and he was there permanently, so I was encouraged to just suck it up. I went to our boss and escalated to our postmaster, but was told that he was full-time and I was a temp, so I just had to deal with it. If the mail needed to be delivered that day to meet the deadline, I had to make it happen. The postmaster's exact words were, just deliver every piece of mail for the route as fast as you can, and don't worry about the time it takes or anything else. You're making huge overtime on this route. They did talk to Dave, and the most egregious stuff stopped, but I was still doing most of the hard work on this route. I mentioned earlier that everyone was always on the clock and tracked. In my first week, some of the nicer people took me aside at the beginning of the summer, and made it clear to me that I was not to move quickly when delivering full-time carriers' routes, because it could make them look bad and cause trouble for them. As a temp, I should always take longer than the full-time carriers because 1. My job was limited and the USPS didn't really track temps closely. 2. I had zero experience, so everything should take me longer. 3. This was a union shop, and they would hate to have to kick my butt for messing up their jobs. And 4. Most of these people were awesome, and I wanted to be a team player. So I was incentivized to move slowly and not make the full-time people look bad. Side note, I am very pro-union and pro-labor, so this is not intended to knock unions, but the context is needed. I decided to wreck Dave's job since he was such a bullying little tool. I requisitioned 2 additional mail carrier bags. These are the over-the-shoulder satchels you see all the time. I was asked why, and I specifically told them I was able to carry all of the heavy items on Dave's route without having to keep going back to my Jeep to reload along the way. The postmaster personally approved it. After doing Dave's route 1 to 3 times per week for a few weeks, he called in sick a lot too. I knew it very well, and was staying on top of the heavy stuff. Once I was comfortable with the route, I started running it. I would literally load up 3 mailbags for each segment of the route and jog or run his entire route. Dave's route usually took him about 4.5 hours per day to walk. This was probably accurate for him, and he'd been on the route for several years. I would finish it in 3 hours or less, every day, rain or shine, no matter how many magazines, samples, or packages were waiting. No one really noticed I was coming back so quickly and punching back out of delivering his route, when I was only doing it a few times per week. I would come back, pick up other work, and get that done. The fun started when Dave took a 2-week vacation and I handled his route 6 days per week. Since I was doing the work right, there was never a backlog of heavy items landing on me once per week. This made it even easier to jog or run his route, as I was back to using 1 mailbag and fast walking or jogging was enough to get it done quickly. I frequently got it done under 3 hours, and never took longer than 3.5. My personal best was under 2.5 hours. I got pulled aside by my supervisor and the postmaster after the first week. They asked me about my timekeeping practices, and I confirmed that I was doing things correctly. I would punch into his route on departure, keep the appropriate logs, and punch back in when I got back. The postmaster then asked me about Dave's route. I played completely dumb. He noted that I complained about the mail volume several weeks ago, and that I used to take 6, 7, or more hours to get it delivered. I explained that I was spreading the heavy deliveries out over the whole week, and that it really made a difference. He asked me if I was really delivering all the mail, and whether I was hiding or throwing away mail. A serious problem if true. I got very offended, and told him I delivered every piece of mail for the route, every day. Then I dropped the bomb. I told him I was having trouble understanding why this route was budgeted 4.5 hours to deliver when it clearly could be done much faster than that. I pointed out that it was a lot of dense multifamily housing, which means less walking. I told him lots of people on the route seemed surprised that I didn't want a soda pop or to sit down and talk for a minute like Dave always did with them. Pure lies. All in my innocent, gosh, I want to help the USPS voice. I told the postmaster that I was delivering all the mail as fast as I could, and not worrying about anything else. I jogged the route again for the next 6 days, and kept getting it done in much less time than Dave. Dave did not know any of this. He made a point of finding me on his first day back to ask how I enjoyed doing all the hard work for him while he was vacationing. I told him I'd learned a lesson about how to treat your coworkers. He laughed at me and went back to sorting mail. He came back a few minutes later and said he got me a souvenir. He then pulled his middle finger out of his pocket. Classic Dave. That was my last week at the USPS, and I headed back to college. I kept in touch with some of the friends I made there, and one of them was very happy to tell me that Dave was fired about 2 months after I left. Due to the massive discrepancy in how long it took me and him to deliver the route, the higher-ups audited his route and discovered that he actually was lollygagging, taking unauthorized breaks, and apparently having an affair with a woman on his route, all on the clock. I, on the other hand, was in great physical shape after all that running, and had pockets full of cash for that semester. His regular T6 also got most of the heavy stuff dumped on her, so she didn't get into any trouble for her delivery times, because she was swamped with all the heavy mail on her day. She actually bid for and got the route full-time when Dave was shown the door. I have more stories on my glorious summer at the USPS, but crushing that jerk Dave is one of the high points. Oh, Dave got in trouble. I mean, I kind of just thought that he would get looked at as being lazy. I didn't realize that you'd get audited and all this other crap would come to the surface. Having an affair with someone on your route, on the clock, is probably not something that the post office is going to look too kindly on. No company likes you wasting their time, especially not a government company when you wasting their time is you getting busy. Coming into it, I really didn't know if Dave necessarily deserved to lose his job over what was going on. But in light of all this new information, it sounds like our original poster did the right thing. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some Bybee music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also links below, and don't forget to subscribe. I let my neighbor's kids spend a night in jail for breaking into my rooftop garden. When I moved cities a few months ago, I rented an apartment on a monthly contract while looking for another one to buy. A couple months in, the owner told me that she'll be putting it on the market, so she'll be needing my schedule to arrange showings. I offered to buy it, and not even 2 weeks later, I was the owner of my own apartment. I live on the second floor. The first floor is owned by a family, father, mother, and 2 teen boys. The ground floor is 2 garages for cars, one for each owner, and finally, the roof is split into 2 roofs with an 8-foot wall and separate doors off of the landing. When I bought my house, I wanted to redo the kitchen and bathroom, so I took some cookies and knocked on my neighbor's house to ask for their schedule. I didn't want it to work while they were at home to avoid bothering them. That day, I was on my balcony and I heard the husband complaining about me buying the apartment. Apparently, they were planning to do so, but I beat them to it. Now, fast forward a couple months, and I've turned my roof into a garden, with raised beds for my veggies, pots for flowers, some garden furniture, and an area with some wooden outside tiles. While coming out one day, I met my neighbor, and she asked to see the garden with her sons. I showed it off and thought that was the end of it. That is, until I started noticing how some of my flowers were cut, the furniture was moved, and things like that. So I installed a camera, and saw that her sons jump over the dividing wall along with some friends and spend their time there. I told the parents and asked them to tell their kids to stop, that most of the time I'm not at home, and if something happens, there's no way to open the door to help them. It's a metal door with a huge padlock. They said okay, but the kids continued to do so. They even started destroying my plants for telling on them. So I gave their mother an ultimatum. They either stop or I'll be calling the police. She scoffed and called me an entitled witch. The next time I got an alert on my phone, I called the cops and said someone broke into my rooftop garden. They came pretty fast, and only one kid managed to escape. The other was caught red-handed and taken to the precinct. Their father almost broke my door and started screaming at me to come and drop the charges. I just threatened to call the police on him as well and went to bed. This morning I went to the precinct and dropped the charges, so he spent the night in jail with, according to his mom, dealers and thugs. I was so sure of my decision that I was teaching him the consequences of his actions, but my mom said that I was too harsh. She said that I punished the parents, not that I taught the kid a lesson. So, Reddit, am I the jerk? No, I'm pretty sure that kid learned the lesson. Trust me, he was miserable in that cell overnight, I'm sure. Yeah, the parents were worried or whatever, but I mean, you tried to deal with them first. It's not your fault they don't have any control over their kids. And at the end of the day, they're damaging your property. You have a right to call the police. If it was a one-time thing, maybe you'll let it go. But it's a regular occurrence. You can't be expected to just let it happen. That's your property. That's your area. They're not supposed to be there. Plain and simple. I'm sure they won't appreciate you going into their bedroom and breaking stuff. A user called me in IT to come up to her office and essentially move her keyboard. So, early Tuesday morning, I'm sitting with a few workmates who are in remote in our daily stand-up before the actual stand-up. Suddenly, I get bombarded with Teams messages by a user, urging me to come upstairs to check her computer, because it's acting up again. I told her I'll be there in 15 minutes after my stand-up, but that simply would not do. She has a very important meeting to attend. I just sigh, excuse myself from my colleagues, drink the remainder of my coffee, and head up. She's already standing at the doorway of her office, gesturing me to hurry up. None of the programs respond. Everything's acting weird. Nothing works. Have you tried restarting the laptop? No, I can't. It won't let me. I then tried to restart the laptop, and indeed, it was acting weird. Opening the start menu only immediately opened the search query, and then showed a constant space being input. At this point, I look down and see your headset is resting on top of the spacebar of the external keyboard, which I remove. Hey, look, your headset was resting against the spacebar. A look of mild panic settles in on her face, and she angrily explains this cannot be the case, as she just set them before I came over. I asked her to describe one of the issues she was having. When I opened Outlook, it kept scrolling through all the mails on its own. I asked her to open Outlook, and then I held down the spacebar, and to nobody's surprise, the error she reported was replicated. Oh, that's weird, it does the same thing now, trying her hardest to look surprised. Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, whatever caused it, it's gone now. If you have any other problems, let me know. As I left, she was opening up Teams to join her extremely important meeting. It was her daily stand-up. Oh my god, people like this drive me crazy. Like, you don't want to do any kind of troubleshooting yourself. You couldn't put two and two together that, hey, maybe if it's putting in a spacebar over and over and over again, then the spacebar is being pressed. Maybe look down at the keyboard and see what's going on over there. This isn't something that you went to waste someone else's time to do, and you pulled them out of their equally important meeting for your meeting. Come on, just use your head next time. Stop being an idiot. Today, I screwed up by thinking I'd kicked food poisoning's butt, but I was wrong. I am the dumbest person alive. Last week, I apparently ate something that was contaminated. Spent 8 hours on Thursday, starting at 3 a.m., puking out my digestive system 3 to 4 times every hour. Slept on the bathroom floor when I could. It really sucked. Well, today's Tuesday. I figured surely by now, especially since I haven't thrown up since Thursday morning, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Sure, my stomach's been a little upset, but that's anxiety about getting sick again. What better way to celebrate my victory, I decided, than a big bowl of chocolate cereal in the car on the way to class while my dad drives. Ah, ha, 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 laughs my digestive system. You fool! And yes, I am the fool. 40 minutes before my first exam of the day starts, and my stomach's trying to escape from its mortal flesh prison. I've learned my lesson. I'm never eating food again. I wish I was never born. I mean, to be fair, I probably would have thought the same thing. Enough time's gone by that you hope everything's alright, but sometimes it creeps up on you when you don't expect it. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Never eat again? You have to. Unfortunately, it's a requirement as a human being. But hey, lesson learned. Next time, maybe take a couple buffer days just in case. Entitled mother demands I give the cake I bought for my pregnant wife to her kid. My wife is currently pregnant with our first child. She messaged me at the end of my work shift that she had sudden cravings for cake, and I was more than happy to get her one. Unfortunately, as this was close to 6 p.m., the bakery only had a Swiss roll left in terms of cake. As I was selecting a few other breads, a mother and her daughter came in, and the girl noticed the Swiss roll in the display cabinet and shouted that she wanted it. However, I had already ordered it, and when the worker took it out for me, the girl started screaming and crying. The mother did initially ask if I could leave the roll for her, but I said that I ordered it first. She then began getting extremely demanding, saying that I didn't need to eat it. Can't you feel bad for a kid? How selfish are you? Things like that. It only stopped when the worker said that I had come first and ordered it before the mother and daughter had even walked in. I got home and told my wife the incident. She said that I was a bit of a jerk for not giving up the cake for the kid, and that she would have understood if the store had no more since I did buy other sweetbreads, or I could have gone to the supermarket instead. She also asked why I didn't tell the mother that I was buying it for pregnant wife's cravings. I didn't see the need to share private info, but wife said that maybe the mother would have been more understanding, and that I appeared to be insensitive by sticking to ordering first as my argument. We did end up enjoying the Swiss roll, and she told me not to worry and just be more mindful next time, but I can't help but feel a bit guilty. Was I the jerk for denying a kid a cake she wanted? No, sorry, you weren't even in the store when it was ordered by someone else. It's unfortunate that your daughter doesn't get to have the cake, but you have the same option as well. You can always go to the grocery store and get something if you really want to. And I agree with our original poster that they're not obligated to share any extra personal information to try and make their argument. They're not the one in the wrong. I get it, the kid wants cake, but you know what? This is maybe a time to teach them a valuable lesson. You don't get everything you want in life. Sometimes you get there just a little bit too late, and it's disappointing, but there's nothing you can do. You move on, you roll with it. Important lesson for the kid. Besides, they're a kid. I'm sure they forgot about it within an hour. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to listen to some Biby music in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything's linked in the description.